Long days, pleasant nights, and welcome to Kingslingers, a Doof media podcast journeying through Stephen King's Dark Tower series and beyond. I am your host, constant reader Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, is that a bomb in your car, or are you just happy to see me? It's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
It's a bomb.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
This week, Mr. Mercedes continues as we cover the 5th chapter of the novel, Call for the Dead. Do you get it, Matt? Because the cell phone call. Do you get the pun?
That's very to be quite entirely honest with you. Didn't actually think about it until you pointed it out just now. But it does strike me as being very authentically hard-boiled, right? To have like a dark, macabre pun, right? Isn't that the most hard-boiled thing ever?
It is. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
and this is a strap in, folks, because this is a sad one. We're doing it again. As Bill and Janie get closer and closer to discovering the identity of Mr. Mercedes himself, Brady, rapidly deteriorating, strikes out against our retired detective, and unfortunately, Janie is the one caught in the crosshairs. Matt, another chapter. I think the sentiment you've been having so far has been a lot is happening, and this is another one in which a lot happens in this chapter. A whole lot happens, and this is our penultimate chapter, by the way. We're finishing the book next week, so. This is kind of the setup for our climax here. And what did you think of it?
Yeah, a lot happens. It's very sad. I'm too sad. I'm too sad today, Scott.
I was afraid of mentioning one of the tropes of these hard-boiled detective stories, which is that the femme fatale dame role is one that does not usually survive the story. I didn't want to bring that up to you, but because I thought I didn't want to tip the hand of the book, but yeah, that is a trope in these type of stories, that the woman that comes to the detective needing help usually betrays him. That didn't happen this time, but also usually does not survive the story. So
yeah,
here we go.
So I didn't want it to happen, and I thought that if I just didn't say what I thought would happen, then it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, that's how that works.
Because it hasn't ever worked before, but I thought maybe this time because look, I know it's the Bill Hodges trilogy. There's not much information to go on, but it's hard to imagine a trilogy of hard-boiled detective novels about a happily married man with a woman that he loves. So I was like, she's probably gonna die, because that would be the most reasonable thing to do here.
Matt, what if they went on a honeymoon to Hawaii and then there was another murder there, and that's the second book? You don't know.
I actually kind of was like hoping for that. Like maybe King will like break the mold and it'll just be about the happy-go-lucky detective Bill Hodges for volumes 2 and 3. But I didn't think we were going to go that way. So,
and of course we don't. No, we lose our love interest tragically at the end of this chapter, and it's very effective. I am, just overall like totally enamored by this book. I love this book. I mean, and I've always liked this book, but man, this read has been stupendous for me. I am loving everything we're doing here. There's so much going on. There's so much to talk about. King's writing, from the individual prose beat by beat level to just the construction of the story and how everything's playing out. It's really, really good. I sound surprised, and I don't mean that meanly or to disparage the novel at all, but it's better than I could have possibly thought. So
yeah, well, it's very tightly written, very, very tightly paced. I think we're almost done. Like you said, we have very little book left, so might be a good time for us to just pause and say, King writes a lot of different types of stories with very different tones, different structures, subject matters, characters. Like that's one thing we love about him. I think that's one reason he's so popular, is he ranges over a really wide space of story types. And I think maybe one reason why he went on this jag writing these crime novels is maybe he just realized like, it's really fun to have like kind of the structure figured out for you, where it's like, this is this is what it is. It is this kind of novel. It's a hard-boiled detective novel. There are certain beats you got to hit. There are certain tropes you got to have. And then the game is that you play within that space. and it keeps things organized and on track, and then he can add his creative flourishes and ideas in that, matrix of storytelling. I think there's something really liberating about using pre-existing structures for storytelling. Like, you decide you're going to write a hard-boiled novel, or you decide you're going to write a heist novel, and then you say, okay, how can I make that mine, right? Like, that can be but it's like the curse of the blank page is like, well, what do I want to say? And it's like, well, we'll start with a structure like this, like a hard-boiled novel, and then that's your frame, and then you explore that. And that's like, this novel is just a good example of, I think, King flexing a lot of his strengths within this particular structure that he hasn't really explored yet.
I think that's such a fantastic point. And I mean, we had a listener write on our Reddit a couple weeks ago, is Mr. Mercedes a deconstruction of this genre? And my response was like, yeah, but don't tell Matt. And I think we're close enough to the end of the book now that we can just say that, yeah, I mean, he's playing hard in these tropes, but I think he is analyzing and picking apart these tropes. But I think you are absolutely correct in that just having this kind of skeleton of a story allows him to play with them in a much more free and loose and fun manner. I do think he's having fun with the story, as brutal as it is at times. I think he's having fun with it, and I think that kind of jumps off the page.
Yeah, I think there are certain things that feel like a deconstruction, or maybe our favorite word, a reconstruction, where he has taken the tropes as they existed, and then kind of taken them apart and put them back together in a more Stephen King way, but
Yeah,
they still are basically functionally the same trope. It's just
they are. Yeah,
he's using them more skillfully than we're used to, perhaps. This
yeah,
isn't to besmirch, detective fiction. I'm just saying he makes them his own, is all I mean to say there.
yeah,
But and again, he is hitting the beats. Like, he this is the structure of a detective novel, right? It's not
yeah.
like it's
Oh yeah,
the kind of deconstruction where he just goes completely off and it becomes something totally wild and different, right?
yeah. No, completely agree. And it's working on me, man.
Me
It
too.
sure
Me
is.
too.
I can't wait. The end is very fun. I'm excited for you to get there. Before we start here, like, the way this whole thing just laid itself out, the last part of this book is 114 pages, which is much more than we normally cover in a single episode. It's about 40 pages more than we're covering this week. But that's like the only way I could break down the ending in a way that A, wouldn't drive you insane, and B, like, just like functionally and structurally worked. So we don't do this very often, but just be prepared, everyone, to read a little bit more.
Makes sense.
All right, Matt, before we jump into the chapters themselves, we do have a couple of really quick announcements here. The first is a fun one. We talked a couple weeks ago about all the various inside joke merch ideas we've had, and our merch store. I don't know, what do we call her, Matt? What do we call Jody here? Like uh, wonderful designer. We need like a job title for her at this, because
Yeah.
she's helped us set up the entire merch store and is continuing to add to it. Well, the point is that Jody took our ideas and made some really, really fun designs out of them. So the propagating the time wave inside joke is now a mug, a shirt, and a pillow. And I love this design so much, Matt. I
Yeah.
love it. I ordered the mug. I kind of want the pillow too. I don't know where I'd put the pillow, but I just want it. So it's really, really cool. We think you should buy that. There's also a Bliss Orb one, Matt. I love this idea Jody had, because I think you sent the email to her about, hey, we have this idea for, like, it's a slippery slope to Bliss Orb, and her response was like, what does that mean? I don't
Uh-huh.
remember this. What does that mean? And so you gave her a definition, basically,
Uh-huh.
which was like a hilarious, like, Matt technical definition of
Right.
Bliss Orb. And she just, like, that's funny. And she just put like a dictionary definition on a mug design. And I love it. I love it so much.
That made me very happy. Yeah, it was funny because originally I was like, I don't know, like, put an orb on it, and no, that wouldn't have worked. It's better this
Mhm.
way. I love this. I love both of these designs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
The
yeah.
the propagating the time wave one, like, has this real cool, like, 70s design that I just
Mhm.
can't get enough of. It's like really, really great.
It's very
Really great.
striking. Like I would think it looked cool even if it didn't, even if I like wasn't close enough to read it. You know, it's just
Yeah,
a really,
yeah.
really striking visual.
And like she showed us a design, and like I think when she originally released it, it was just the pillow and the t-shirt, and I was like, this is awesome, I would love it on a mug, but I can't think of how you would make that work. And of course she just nailed it. The
Yeah,
mug looks great too. So all this being said, like we're making merchandise that we love, in hopes that you guys would love it too. If you want to check out those designs, please do. You can head to doofmedia.myshopify.com and find the Propagating the Time Wave mug and the Bliss Orb mug, and there will be more to come. We have more ideas, and Jody's working on stuff for us right now. So there's a ton out there. We see you guys buying them. I think Matt, literally as we started to record, one of our listeners posted their Propagating the Time Wave shirt that they had delivered today. So
wonderful.
perfect timing as always, and it looks great. It looks great. It's man, I love this stuff. I love this stuff. We're not just so you know, we're not doing this to make like oodles of money. It's just kind of fun for us, and we hope it's fun for y'all.
Yeah, no, this looks so cool. I love it. I'm
Yeah,
looking at the
yeah.
shirt right now. That's great.
Yeah, so everyone thank Jody, the master of Kingslingers Live, and also the master of the merch store.
Yeah.
And buy the merch.
Yep.
One more announcement, Matt. You want to handle this one?
Yeah. This week we're putting out another episode of our bonus Patreon only podcast, Castle Talk. We're talking about episodes 5 and 6 of season 2 of the TV show Castle Rock, which we are really enjoying. I mean, I enjoyed the first season a lot, enjoying the second season tremendously currently. If you're at all interested in hearing us talk about this Stephen King adjacent, Stephen King involved show, go check that out over on the Patreon.
Yeah, I think episode 5 was one that kind of blew us away, and yeah, I mean, I once again very pleasantly surprised at how much I'm enjoying this show this season. So we've only got 2 more episodes of that bonus podcast coming in the next couple months, so it's plenty of time to catch up. And if you have not watched Castle Rock, like if you're kind of unsure, go watch it. It's pretty good. It's pretty good, man.
Yeah, no joking. We keep saying week after week, or month after month rather, that it's really hard for us to stop and not rush ahead because it's just so good, so tightly done.
Yeah. All right, that is Castle Talk, available right now on Patreon, patreon.com/doofmedia. Matt, let's get into it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Call for the Dead. It's a cell phone call to a bomb that blows up a person.
Okay, I get it now.
I don't blame you for not getting it, because I honestly have read this book 3 times and did not get it until preparing the script. So there you go.
It's a pretty typical experience for us when we analyze things. It turns on that part of our brain and we're like, oh yeah. So.
Also, I just want to say the chapter next week that we're covering is Kisses on the Midway. And like, knowing the fact that very clearly in this week's reading, they talk about how the concert that everyone's going to, that's going to be like where Brady is trying to blow up, is like carnival themed. I still read that title and was like, they don't go to a carnival. What's going on? so I am not smart is the point here. Anyway, let's begin our chapter. This chapter begins with Bill once again at his favorite Italian restaurant, only this time he's going with Janie and Jerome, his new and unfortunately short-lived quartet. Bill, Matt, is rocking a new fedora, one that has been bought for him by Janie, and it's the most adorable thing in the world that she bought him a detective's fedora, because she's this is a deconstruction and she's trope aware. So adorable, especially how it's fitting perfectly with his now better fitting suit, because Bill has lost 7 to 8 pounds already so far. It just goes to show you, Matt, you stop eating cake at lunchtime and look what happens.
Yeah, well, he's also getting a lot more exercise now, if you know what I mean. He's walking around a lot more.
No, I thought you meant the sexual intercourse.
Oh yeah, that's true too, yeah. Scott. Yeah. But I'm really happy that he's got a cool hat now. So I'm really great.
Matt, you seem a little grumpy. Are you okay?
Grumpy. I'm just a little sad, just a little down. It's very hard, especially these early parts of the chapter where we're getting to see them be all lovey-dovey and happy, and you're seeing Bill being happy for the first time after being literally suicidal at the beginning of the book. You're like, Fuck. Because because we know how this ends.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're fair. You're fair.
Yeah.
It is it's a bummer. It is a bummer. And that, I mean, like, it's interesting because maybe this is part of the death flags that he's trying to set up for this. Is like, wait a minute, there's just too happy. There's too much happiness going on here. Something bad is about to
Yeah.
happen.
I have to confess that I know the concept of death flags, right? Obviously, it just means like the storyteller is cluing you in that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm just like immune to death flags, like because I don't ever want the character to die. So I'm like, well, maybe it's a false death flag. Maybe they're just trying to make me think they're going to die. But that's just to but then they're not going to die, and then I'm going to be relieved. And I'm always wrong, but I still hope. It's just my optimistic nature, I guess.
Yeah. Matt, this makes me so happy. The forever optimist, anti death flag, false flag believer, proud supporter of the false flag movement. I think Matt Friedman over here.
False. There's a there's a meme somewhere in here. False death flag. False flag. Something in there.
That's definitely fair. I don't know. I think I'm kind of with you in that. Like, I only notice these things when I'm specifically like sitting down to analyze them. Like, I think in my average viewing of movies and television or reading of books, I'm not like, oh. But I do think I was also kind of trained on this a little bit because I have a lot of distinct memories of my parents watching movies and TV when I was a kid, and my mom and dad would turn to each other sometimes and go, "Oh, she's a dot," which I guess a dot meant we're gonna die. I don't know why. Is that like an actual expression? You know how like your family has expressions and you just assume they're real expressions, but you don't actually know if other people actually say these things. I don't know if that's a real expression, but that's what they would say.
Well, I've never heard it before, but maybe somebody out there has. I wonder if it's
I'm
an
gonna
acronym.
find out. It's like a horribly offensive thing that I didn't know about.
You've been saying it all these years.
Oh my god, yeah. But anyway, so yeah, like my parents would do that all the time. I have a lot of memories of that. So maybe you just weren't trained in death flag boot camp.
Maybe it's that. Maybe it's the optimism, and I just don't want them to die, and so I choose to see it as like, well, they're trying to make me worried about this character, but that's just so they can then save the character,
Sure.
which I'm not. I mean, I'm not totally crazy because that's the thing that happens sometimes. Like
For sure.
you want to stoke the feeling of anxiety of oh, these characters are in danger, and then you don't necessarily always kill them, right? So it's just I always hope that's what's going to happen instead of the character dying, which is what happens quite often, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So Matt, not to be this guy, but I do just want to point out here that when Pete picked this restaurant for lunch for the two of them, Bill commented internally at that time, this is such a cop move to pick this place where it's in not a good part of town. He probably didn't even consider it because he's an active duty cop with a pistol on his hip. That's such a fascinating choice to make, and he debates on whether he should bring his gun to this place because it's still unsafe even in the daytime. And then he decides that the woman he's dating and the child, sorry, young adult, that he is kind of co-opted into his investigation here. This is where we're going to meet up to have lunch and discuss the case together. Like that says something to me, and I was thinking for a while about what this could possibly mean, and I wonder if what we're doing here is literally just demonstrating how Bill Hodges has basically gone on active duty again. Like he is thinking like an active duty detective again. He's not thinking like the Det Ret anymore. He's not thinking like a civilian anymore. He's thinking like a cop again. And so he makes the same mistake that or the same carelessness, let's call it, that Pete did, in that he just doesn't think about how, hey, maybe this isn't the best place for us to meet up.
Yeah, none of this occurred to me at the time, but I just straightforwardly agree with you. I think he is just back in his old groove. It doesn't even occur to him that this is a dangerous part of town because he thinks I'm basically a cop now.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean he beat up some hooligans like 5 feet away from this place last time he was here, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
I probably would not bring Janie and Jerome here. I would probably go to like the Applebee's.
He did. Yeah. The sock hasn't made another appearance, has it?
No, it hasn't.
Is
Do
that
you think it's going
Chekhov's
to
sock?
the happy slappy,
I think
happy
so.
slapper?
It's Chekhov's happy slapper, Chekhov's Argyle sock.
Sure. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
I do just want to say, like, I really love the detail here around the Jerome and Janie meeting. How these are two people that, you know, I kind of a little bit tongue in cheek said Katet a little bit ago. But it is really interesting to me how quickly these people, how fast friends they basically are. That we see Jerome is incredibly kind to her, and they just immediately mesh well, and everyone is getting along right away. It's really great. And I just want to say here in this moment, if we haven't said it already, I really, really love the Jerome character like a lot. Like, this is a book with a wonderful cast of characters, like so many great characters to talk about, even the ones that drive you crazy, like Brady Hartsfeld. But Jerome stands out to me. And I think he really gets a chance to shine in this week's reading. The way he interacts with Janie, the way he interacts with Holly later, like this is just like really, really great Jerome stuff, and I really like him.
Yeah, we talked a bit about Jerome over the weeks, but maybe we could focus on him for just for a second here, because
Sure.
and ask what we're doing with this character, because he's this incredibly cool, smart, moral, promising young man, which is other than the fact that very often the detective will have like a sidekick who often dies. I don't think it's a typical noir trope. It might be. I might just be uneducated. Other things I thought of is like he's definitely younger than Brady, but not that much younger. I mean, I forget how old Brady is, to be honest.
Brady's
But
28, so he's about a decade younger than him.
yeah, he's substantially younger, I guess. But the thing about Brady, though, as we will talk about at length this week, is that Brady has arrested development, like in a big way. So I think possibly one thing that occurred to me is that he's meant to be an explicit contrast to Brady, where you have this. We call him an old soul, or I don't know if we use exactly that word.
Bill calls him an old head on top of a young body.
There you go. And Brady is a young head on top of an old body, right? so there's our compare and contrast, I think.
Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something here. I like this a lot, because they're both like the ways in which you can make characters contrast is by making certain things in which they are similar. And the one thing that Jerome has been used for is his, IT expertise, right? And so he and Brady have that in common. They're of the younger generation. They're very knowledgeable in computers and how they work, and so that makes us compare them, and it makes the contrast stand out so much better. Like, Jerome is kind, he is mature. Like, it is like a 17-year-old to walk up to a woman he's never met, take her hands and say like, hey, look, I just want to let you know I'm really sorry for your loss. You lost your mother yesterday. Like, that is, I'm not saying like I'm not saying 17-year-olds lack empathy. Obviously, I think they have it, but that does seem like a read and understanding of the social situation, and what is probably the kind thing to do there that not necessarily every teenager would immediately have, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, teenage me would have been a million miles away from any sort of action like that. Even if I felt the compassion, I wouldn't have reached out to a person that way, right? I would have been too self-conscious. So he's just, very put together,
Yeah.
And upstanding, and I don't know, just a great guy. It's going to be terrible when he's killed next week.
Wow. Okay, is this a formal prediction from Matt here?
I don't know, man. I feel like the trope suggests that he will be, like, in the same way that the trope suggested that Janie would be killed, and I resisted making that prediction because I was like, well, maybe we're not gonna, maybe this is a deconstruction, like maybe we're not gonna follow those particular tracks, and then King's like, no, we're gonna do it. But it's just gonna make sense, like it's gonna be organic and part of the story. And it's totally plausible that Drum would be killed. We've mentioned repeatedly, I mean, talk about death flags, we've mentioned repeatedly how Hodges has put him in danger,
Mm-hmm.
like for the entire book, right? So, and
Sure.
Brady hates him and wants to kill him. And um, I will say, killing both Janie and Jerome would feel like a bit much in a certain way, where you're just piling it on at that point. Like there's a line you cross, and then I'm no longer sad, I'm just mad,
Mm-hmm.
And I think King is aware of this line. So I think really what's happening is he's killed Janie to make us aware that people can die and thus more worried. And then I think he can pull back from having to kill Jerome but make us really worried that we're going to go there. So I
Sure.
think I will predict that Jerome will not die using
Okay.
that chain of convoluted logic that I just
Yeah, you
said.
took a while to get there, but I'm happy that you got you got there.
All right. All right.
One other thing I wanted to talk to you about is there's this moment here in this part where uh, Bill is kind of talking about, his belief in how the universe operates. And this is, I think, part and parcel of a long conversation you and I have had about how King's universe operates in general. And I just wanted to kind of highlight this part a little bit here. He says, he's not so naive as to believe that every homicide is solved, but more often than not, murder does out. Something, a certain wifey body in a certain abandoned gravel pit, for instance, comes to light, and it's as if there's a fumble fingered but powerful universal force at work, always trying to put wrong things right. The detectives assigned to the murder cases reads reports, interview witnesses, work the phones, study forensic evidence, and wait for that force to do its job. When it does, if it does, a path appears. It often leads straight to the doer, the sort of person Mr. Mercedes refers to in his letter as a perk. So this is not in so many words, Matt, like the idea, the concept of a force like the white, a force for good that is, constantly trying to make order out of disorder, to make good out of bad. Um, eh, we don't use any of those words, right? We don't use any of those
No.
phrases, but I think it's here, and it aligns with what we understand King's universe to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you could even impose the idea of evil destroying itself onto this, where
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
literally destroying itself, but it's sort of betraying itself. Because the nature of a murder is that it's going to leave a bunch of evidence and mess around for people like these detectives who are trying
Mhm.
to rectify that disorder to find.
Yeah. I also can't remember what book we mentioned the phrase doer and whether that was a common phrase. We were told at the time that it was. Well, here it is again. Here's doer.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's popped up a couple times in this book, but
Yeah.
I think it's a detective phrase, right?
Yeah. So, Matt, as the three of them depart the restaurant, we do get a small but pretty important piece of information here. Jerome's sister has managed to convince his mother to let her and a bunch of her little preteen friends go to the Round Here concert this Thursday at the MAC. Uh oh.
Oh, indeed, raising those stakes. We got to raise the stakes.
Yeah, it is fun how we just kind of lay this out here for us. Like we know, like, this King is using dramatic irony a lot in this book, right? And here's
Mhm.
another little piece of it is like we know exactly what that means, and we're like, oh no, oh no.
Yep.
And then Janie and Bill go home, and they bang, and it's nice. It's nice.
Yeah, great. Good for them.
Matt, don't be like that. They had their time. It was a happy time. Don't take it away from
I'm
them.
I'm just so sad, Scott. I'm just so sad.
I know. I know. But maybe this will make you laugh here, though, because I love this whole thing. It says, "Will you come to the memorial service on Wednesday? Say you will, please. I need a friend." Of course. I'll be at the viewing on Tuesday as well. She looks surprised, but happily so. That seems above and beyond. Not to Hodges, it doesn't. He's in full investigative mode now, and attending a funeral of someone involved in a murder case, even peripherally, is standard police procedural. I just love this, Matt, as like, to Janie, this is this moment of like ultimate kindness and compassion and gentlemanliness. But to Bill is like, well, yeah, no, it's for the case. And I'm not saying he's not being kind and compassion, but like the way he frames it here is just like, yeah, no, this is what you would do in a case. You would just
Right.
do this.
Yeah, clearly she's thinking like, oh, it's because I'm his girlfriend, and he's like, well, yeah, it's because you're the witness.
Yeah. Uh-huh. One thing I do want to point out here is just how clearly the text demonstrates that Bill is at this point just like fully in love with Janie. Like, I think they make arguments to each other a little bit later in the story about how they're not in love with each other yet and they don't want to fall in love with each other, but like is fully in love with her at this point, right?
Yeah,
I think there's this beat that we see throughout this chapter, and maybe it was a little bit in the last chapter, and it just didn't, I didn't notice it as much. The nose wrinkling she does when she's teasing him is this kind of like adorable Janie specific characterization that he is clearly clocking and paying attention to, because it's like something kind of funny and cute that he's just loves about her. And I just, it makes it very, very clear his feelings are quite strong at this point, right?
totally.
We cut over to Brady now, Matt. Hooray! I know you love cutting over to Brady. Although in this case, I think you actually do, right?
I do. I do love being reminded. I mean, Brady in this section is, I mean, King's doing one of my favorite things that writing does, where it makes you empathize with someone who is very, very different from you,
Yeah.
for better or worse. And I think we have basically correctly just talked about how horrible Brady is, with a few notes of like, his home life seems pretty messed up, but it's not enough to really make me care, and I still hate him. This week, I think we kind of late in the game actually begin to really air out Brady's past, and I think it does somewhat shift the way we think about him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I still don't ever think we would like say we like him or his behavior, but yeah, it makes him, I think, much more of a tragic figure than he has been in the past.
Yeah. Just like, I agree, like it's not like we're going full Jamie Lannister with this guy where it's like actually everything that he did had a good reason, but it's like, well, look, there's a reason why he's this way, and it's a
Yeah,
tragic reason, and it doesn't like excuse anything, but it just makes you feel bad for him, but also you think he's a piece of shit still. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
Um, but first, before we get to that flashback, though, we do cut over to Brady, who we see is just like sitting at his workbench in his control room, not doing anything, just sitting there. I love how King highlights the newspaper is there. You know, what he's doing is basically laying the pieces of Brady is going to eventually open the newspaper and see the death announcement, and that's how he figures out where Bill is going to be, so he can plot his murder. But I just wanted to point this out because the way he describes the paper is, quote, still rolled up inside its thin plastic condom, which, like, for those of you that are small children out there that don't know what a newspaper is, it's a thing that used to be delivered to houses, and they would put usually a plastic bag. They would put it inside a plastic bag, like for when it rains. So the newspaper, because paper. Do you know what paper is? How do we describe what paper is? No, so basically it's just a plastic bag, right? It's just a plastic bag, but that you would describe it as a thin plastic condom
uh-huh.
is just so incredibly Brady, and his like obsession but also general confusion with the sex stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's just constant and present forever in him, and it comes out in these ways, like
Yeah.
this little description here.
Well, it's like unnecessarily sexualizing it and making it gross, and also it's just very adolescent, right? Like
Yeah.
that's
Hmm.
one thing
Hmm.
that kept. I think I don't remember if we like said this previously or not, but this week in particular really hammers in what I said a minute ago, which is that he's in a state of arrested development. He has the mind of a child, and he's constantly like thinking these gross and violent things, and it's really like, well, it's just like he's like a teenager, like he just thinks like a younger person, and
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
a younger person's type of thought to have.
Yeah, I mean, it is like, I think it would be completely fair if you like forgot how old Brady was to just like be inside his head, especially in these chapters, and just be like, oh yeah, this is just like a teenager. This is just like
Yeah,
maybe 18, right? Maybe
right.
just out of adolescence
Yeah,
into a true adulthood. But no, he's almost 30.
yeah. When I was comparing him to Jerome earlier, I for a second I just forgot whatever information we'd been told previously, and I was like, he's probably what, like 22. And like the reason I say that is, partly sort of his like life station, but also just the way he feels, right? The way it feels to
Mm,
be inside his head.
sure, yeah. I do really like also how King like as you said, I think we're in his head more explicitly than we have been in some of the early chapters. Like we are very, very close in his head. Like the narration of the text is echoing his direct thoughts, and it shows how actually like bad Brady is doing right now. I
Yeah.
love this part here. How he's going to get to the Round Here concert at the MAC wearing his carefully constructed suicide vest. If he really intends to do that, that is. Right now it all seems like an awful lot of work. A long row to hoe, a high mountain to climb, but he can't think of any other similes or all those metaphors. Like this is the narration of the book,
Yeah.
right? But this is literally just Brady's thought process. And it really gets us into this mindset of like he is losing it.
Yeah.
This is really random and barely like his train of thought has left the station.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's bits later where he just is like laughing at things that make no sense and just like losing
Yeah.
his mind laughing at things. Um, there's a lot less of those breaks out of the close third person. We're much more keeping inside his head and just experiencing this from inside his head. I really love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We also learn here, Matt, that Brady is now sleeping down in his basement. He's too afraid to go up to the second floor with the rotting corpse of his mother. I do like the beat that I think plays several times throughout this chapter of him like coming home and like smelling and being like, "Up, no rotting smell yet," and then eventually we get to, well, it's just something on the air, just a little taste of something. It's disgusting, but I just like the tone that sets of like him walking home and the first thing you do is smelling. Is my dead mom rotting yet?
Yeah. And he knows she will be eventually.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's just how long can he ignore it, basically?
Yeah. But even down in the basement, he's still full of distractions and memories, specifically of his brother Frankie, who we learned died down here. And that is kind of the way the book, sets us up for this extended flashback that happens. We're off into this extended flashback of what happened. This has been something referenced from the very beginning of the novel, but we finally get to find out what happened to his brother Frankie. How did this happen? And here we go. This is rough.
It's rough, but it's also my favorite part of the book because I like horribly fucked up stuff.
It is incredible. It's incredibly well done. But yeah, it is a tough set. There's moments in this whole extended flashback that rival to me some of the most difficult stuff I've ever read. It is not easy.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that the story of this flashback begins, Matt, with a little factoid about how Mrs. Hartsfield's body was just like still like smoking hot after having two kids, which since King has primed us for being in a very, very close Brady's mind's perspective is like the perfect thing, right? It's like,
Yeah.
this is like, it's like, yeah, most women, after they have kids, let it go a little bit, but not this woman. She's still smoking hot. You're like, wait a minute, this is a flashback from her son.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The incest. I forgot.
It's great. I love it.
We learn that Brady's early years were relatively normal, Matt. His parents were happy and healthy, and then unfortunately his father died in a freak accident on the job. His mother got enough money from the electric company he worked for to survive for a while, but then there was another accident. Brady's little brother Frankie choking on a piece of apple. And I just want to say this part, as the parent of an 11-month-old baby, like choking on food is your worst nightmare, right? Like
Yeah.
that, like you got to the point where you're feeding your kids solids and they're doing pretty good, but they're just like shoving pieces of stuff in their mouth, and you're like, oh, I hope you don't choke on that.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's totally scary.
Oh yeah, don't worry, Scott. The fear of choking totally goes away as the child gets older.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I there's a lot of really interesting stuff in here threaded throughout. Like I think it's interesting how Brady's inner narration has a lot of this stuff. Like, Frankie was already not a very bright boy even before the accident, but like Brady's evidence for this is like he acts like a toddler.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because like the text tells us that Frankie was not a very bright boy, but like I personally read it as we're so inside kid Brady's head that we're like perceiving stuff the way a child would perceive it. Like he thinks his little brother is dumb because his little brother is a toddler, not
Yeah.
because his little brother is actually unintelligent.
Yeah, he's so dumb because he's carrying around this fire truck all the time, and he
Yeah.
really likes a fire truck.
Right.
This 3-year-old.
Yeah. It's only a dumb child would have a toy that they liked, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Matt, we've been throwing around words like psychopath and sociopath for Brady, like we're doctors actually making a actual diagnosis, but we're not that. I think it's actually an interesting conversation here in this flashback to try to define like what is Brady. Like certainly he is a monster, right? But like what kind of monster? I feel like Brady is, as depicted here, both maybe just a normal kid, but also there is something slightly wrong with him, right? Like there's quotes here like he had already learned to wear a happy face and to keep his feelings to himself. And then when his brother does choke, he's talking about the babysitter's reaction and says the fat babysitter was full of fake concern. The reason Brady knew it was fake was because he wasn't concerned. So why would the fat babysitter care? So he's definitely not like normal, right?
Yeah. I think so. I mean, I got the feeling that he's not entirely normal, but that he could have possibly grown up to be normal.
Yes.
Like I think little children are in some ways natural psychopaths. Not in all ways. Like little children can also be extremely empathetic, but they can also be extremely cruel. It's inconsistent. It can lead to some pretty wild moments. But every almost every child exhibits some disturbing behaviors, and then almost every child grows up into a functional adult who has a functioning sense of empathy. I think really, if I had to put my finger on it, it's that sometimes the little empathy circuit doesn't get tripped when it kind of should, and they act horribly, and then maybe they later feel bad about it. It's just the process of growing up, right?
Yeah.
So they can be brutal. They can be brutal to their siblings. They can, especially if they feel like their siblings are stealing attention or resources. So the fact that he feels this animosity or this lack of concern for his own sibling, not actually that shocking.
Yeah.
Not that surprising.
Especially with a mother that is clearly like fostering and help and assisting in the feelings he has towards her, as you and me against the world type of thing.
Yeah.
Like clearly his mother likes him more than Frankie even
Right.
before Frankie's choking accident, and that is so these feelings against his brother are being fostered by his mother, and that remains true through his brother's death.
Yes, exactly. And I guess just one more note to emphasize here that we didn't pull out yet is that he does actually try to save his brother's life. When his mom tells, his brother's choking, his mom tells him to help. He tries to help. He really does try. He doesn't know what he's doing because he's a small child. But King goes out of his way to show from inside Brady's head that Brady is indeed trying, not just pretending to try. Like the scene would read different if Brady like half-heartedly pretended to try, or like I think it's worth just saying all of this because we're not doing like the character from It who is just a psychopath whose name
Yeah,
escapes
yeah.
me. Like we're not doing that. We're doing a
Hochstetter, Patrick
Hochstetter.
Hochstetter.
We're not doing a Hochstetter character. We're doing a kid who maybe he's a little off, but I think he could have grown up to be a healthy kid, a healthy man. But his mom, this bad thing happened, and his mom kind of did everything she could to make it worse. Right? I think that's what we're doing with this character.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do think you're right because I think calling him a psychopath, I don't think is correct. Like just you talking about that empathy trigger, like he clearly feels things, right? Like
Right?
his propensity to feel is not irreparably broken. Like there is the guilt towards what he did to his brother, which I don't even think he ever like verbalizes it as guilt, but he is constantly thinking about his little brother, and it is constantly upsetting him physically because of the emotional baggage he's carrying around it. He just doesn't know how to process any of that because he never had a parent that taught him how to process any of that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that the psychopath label is just incorrect here.
Mm-hmm.
But
Agree.
it makes him much more interesting, I think.
Totally.
So unfortunately, poor Frankie suffers from brain damage and is never the same. I do like the little bit of detail that by reaching down his throat to try to get the apple piece out, Deborah Hartsfield actually pushed it further, which is like a true thing that they tell you not to do. Is like if your kid's choking on something, do not reach into their throat to try to get it. That's the worst possible thing you could do. Because we had to go through all this training when we, had to. The hospital asks you to take these training courses, right? To learn how to like do the Heimlich and CPR and all this stuff. I remember that from my class, Matt.
Yeah, they only made me take that class once, which is interesting because they didn't make me take it for each child.
I definitely did not do it for the second child, so I think that's maybe just generally true as well. You've got it. You guys know what you're doing, right? No.
I mean, it's funny. Yeah, right. It's funny because it's like I feel like if I were truly responsible, I would go get like a refresher every 6 weeks, but you know, you don't have the time.
I will say right now, I know what you're supposed to do when your kid is choking. I know how to do the Heimlich maneuver. I also am worried that the absolute panic that would set in the second I see my kid is actually really choking would throw every bit of that out my brain. And
Totally.
I could feel the panic and fear that would immediately bubble up in me the second that happens. So yeah, it's tough. Like I think Deborah Hartsfield does a lot of things wrong in this story, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm willing to throw her a bone for the panic that sets in when she sees her child is choking and making the wrong decision there, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's
one thing I'm like, I'm not going to hold that against you too much, actually, Debbie.
right. You didn't do this on purpose, at least.
Yeah. So yeah, Deborah Hartsfield decides, I think in this moment, the first of many mistakes she makes here is confiding in her 8-year-old child that like, hey, it probably would have been better if your brother had just died. It probably would have been much better. Like that's the beginning of this relationship between the two of them that is being defined by the mother inappropriately, right? I think this is one of many mistakes, but it really stuck out to me that you would be like, look at your child, and be like, yeah, don't tell anyone this, but I think it would have been better if your little brother had just died.
Right. Yeah, I think the reason we're seeing it in this flashback is that these are all of the little ideas that wormed their way into young Brady's head and messed him up as badly as they did.
Yeah. I love this sentence or this paragraph so much, that the year that followed was 5 years long. There was a life-sucking monster in the house, and the monster's name was Frankie. I love that.
Yeah, I love that sentence. That's amazing. That jumped out to me when I was listening to it. Yeah.
I do also think, and I want to be careful with my words here, but like there is some amount of empathy you can imagine having for people who have now found themselves having to take care of, a brain damaged young child, that's gotta be hard. Like that's gotta be very, very difficult. So I completely understand his mother's exhaustion, his frustration. Like I love this whole bit. It says here that that year was full of sometimes. Sometimes he loved Frankie up and kissed him. Sometimes he'd shake him and say, "This is all your fault. We're going to have to live in the street, and it's all your fault." Sometimes putting Frankie to bed after a day at a beauty parlor, Deborah Ann would see bruises on the boy's arms and legs. Once on his throat, which was scarred from the tracheotomy the EMTs had performed. She never commented on these. Sometimes Brady loved Frankie. Sometimes he hated him. Like, this is, as much as we're seeing like Brady kind of slowly turn into a monster, I think that's kind of relatable. I can imagine.
Especially for a child. I don't know if the text says this explicitly, but it's like she's just putting Brady in charge of him and going to work.
Yeah, like
basically
having him call in sick to school, to miss school, to come home and take care of his little brother, his little brother who needs a special needs child, right? Yeah. That like it's one thing to make an 8-year-old responsible for babysitting your brother all day, but a special needs child is more than that, and it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It makes you really feel for child Brady. Like I think it's interesting. I think it can feel a lot of empathy for child Brady that doesn't quite migrate to adult Brady, because at a certain point, I think I don't know. You and I have tried to plumb the depths of where do you draw the line of culpability, and I think we've determined that it's not really possible to do it like consistently. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna report my emotions. My emotions are that I feel really bad for young child Brady, and
Yeah.
that empathy kind of evaporates when you realize, well, it's been 20 years since this happened, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so
Young Brady, placed in an impossible situation, has this unnatural, disgusting attraction, sexual attraction to his mother that I think, we asked the question last week of like, when did this start, right? And we don't see in this flashback with young Brady anything explicitly sexual, right? We
yeah.
also see he clearly is attracted to her, and like the close physical contact with her. He's got his little boy boner.
Mhm.
Um, she must be aware of these things, right? Like she
Y-
must, and
yeah.
is not like pushing away from it, is not re-establishing the appropriateness of the relationship. It's fine to sleep in the same bed as your mother as an 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid, right? That's not a big deal. But the way they're doing it is inappropriate, and she's not setting that and making that clear.
Yeah. No, I hold her like totally responsible for all of
Yeah.
this.
Yep.
Because in her mind, it's also, you know, me and Brady against the world. And she
Yep.
begins to see Brady as like her man at a certain point, even though he's a child. And she totally like creates the context in which all of this can happen and then basically makes it happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I totally blame her for this.
And that includes the death of Frankie itself, right? Because
Yeah.
eventually they've had enough in full view of his mother. Indeed, perhaps because explicitly her permission, Brady pushes Frankie down the basement stairs. The way this scene plays out, Matt, like we see that the tired, drunk, angry Deb Hartsfeld kicking Frankie's fire truck down the stairs. We see how Brady observes that and responds to it. We see the slight nod that Deborah gives Brady right before he kicks his brother down the stairs. And there's an argument to be made there. You've established the fact that we are firmly in Brady's point of view here, in his memory. Like, you could maybe make an argument, was the nod really there, was it not? Is this just his interpretation of his mom wanted him to do this, and he's imagined this explicit nod because he feels like she wanted him to do it? I don't know. Her reaction to it kind of, to me, says this is exactly what she wanted to happen.
Yeah.
Maybe she didn't consciously set out in this clear chain of events, but when it happened, when the opportunity presented itself, she wanted it to be taken.
Yeah, I mean, it's not clear whether it's premeditated. It doesn't have to be premeditated, but I
No.
think she saw an opportunity to get rid of her younger child arise and totally immediately took advantage of that. Like just I think there was a nod. You know, I think if anything, I think Brady, like a lot of his being messed up in the head is not quite fully realizing that he was just a little kid who was snookered into this by his mom, who
Yeah.
really is the one who is responsible here. Like, he feels guilty. We know from way earlier in the book he thought, I killed Frankie and my mom helped cover it up, and it had kind of even been her idea.
Hmm.
And like, reading this scene, I'm more like, like, poor kid, this was totally your mom's doing. She used you as a murder weapon, but she did every part of this, like, except for the actual touching of the child, which she made you do, which is just even more messed up. But
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
That she makes him be the one that pushes him down the stairs.
Right.
And then even at that point, when we're like, okay, we're just going to smother him to put him out of his misery, like, you, the child, are going to do that? Like,
Right.
that's fucked up. That's completely fucked up.
Yeah.
And it does put him in this, like, I think it, I don't want to assign too much like malicious intent to the decision to do that. I think it was just ultimately cowardice on her part, as like, she's this weak, terrible person who couldn't actually do it herself. But what it does is it like locks them in a relationship forever, right? Because exactly what you just said is that I did this terrible thing and my mother saved me from it. like because he was the one that did the deed, because he was the one that pushed her, because he was the one that pushed him, he was the one that smothered the baby. It's his act and her saving him, and now he's indebted to he's indebted to her forever because she saved him. And so now, I have to have this horribly inappropriate relationship, but I also have to provide for her. I have to take care of her. I have to abandon my life entirely. Like this whole section ends on like, and so, by the time my mom got too drunk and lost her job, it was okay because he was old enough to do work by himself. And no, he didn't need to go to college because college is for suckers. And like, it's like he completely abandoned his life because of this event that she instigated. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And now she has him sort of tied to her forever because they share this terrible secret that he feels is his fault.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
It's one of the things that makes you kind of think he's not a psychopath is that was said earlier that he feels these real feelings of love toward Frankie, but also resentment. And he feels real love for his mother, but also resentment, and comes to really hate her, but also I think love her. And this is why he's so messed up, is like his only relationships are with these people who he has these terrible feelings of anger toward. And I think he can't even express to himself the anger that he has to his mother for his mother. It's just transformed and it just poisons him.
Yeah, totally. It sucks. It's awful. And I like, I don't know what we call him, because I think psychopath is the wrong term, right? I don't even think sociopath is the right term, because he clearly grasps right and wrong. And it's not that I don't think it's that he's like clinically like unconcerned about the feelings of right and of other people. I don't know. What do you think? I don't have training in any of this.
I don't either. I mean, I think sociopath might be the right label because he was kind of beaten into this shape by life.
Sure.
And also just maybe rather than having sort of a DSM label, just say like he's a victim of abuse who has been warped by that abuse.
Yeah.
And when like the thing about abuse is it's not just like, oh, I'm really sad because I was abused. It's like an abuse victim like they take on the way they were treated, and they begin to think, well, I must deserve this. This must be who I am. And that's kind of what we've seen with him, is he's taken it on, and he has these violent impulses and thoughts because this is, he was made into this guy. He was made into a murderer by his mom as a child, as a literal child. Yeah. And that just sits in there and festers.
Yeah. I do want to, as you were talking, I just looked something up, and I do want to retract something we said, that it is not Brady that smothers his brother. It is Deborah.
Oh, okay.
She actually does the smothering. He gets and hands her the pillow, but she does the smothering.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of that, because it makes it even more clear that she's just the one who she murdered her child.
Yeah,
Brady was also there, but that's not how he sees it, though.
So. I think the hardest part for me, talking about what I said earlier about like some of the most difficult stuff to read ever, this moment right here where it says Frankie looked up first at his mother, then at his brother. Brady, he said. It'll be okay, Frankie, Brady said, and held out the pillow. Just like the idea, like, of like this little kid, this confused, broken little kid with his neck broken. He's dying, and he looks up at his brother and just says his brother's name. It just like broke my heart. It just completely broke me. Like, it's awful. It's so awful.
Yeah, I mean, the worst part, I don't know, there's a lot of worse parts, but to me the worst part is that he calls out his brother and not his mom, because I think even this little boy knows that his brother loves him and his mom doesn't.
Yeah.
Brady might resent him, but he does love him, and I think his mom is actually past that point already.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. It's awful. Oh, this whole thing's awful. It is. Yep. And so man, fuck this Brady Hartsfeld guy. Is it Feld or Field? I think I'm saying them interchangeably. Field. It's Field, right? Hartsfield.
I don't remember.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't care. let's
Yep.
move on.
Yep.
I hate this guy. I hope he dies, but also it's a tragedy. It's certainly a tragedy.
Yeah, I feel bad for this totally unrelated kid that we're reading
Yeah.
about right now.
So Brady kind of wakes up from his memories to find he's torn apart the newspaper's condom. Um, uh, Freud would have a field day with that.
Uh-huh.
He then starts to peruse the newspaper, and we get this. Paul McCartney, the ex-Beatle Brady's mom used to call Old Spaniel Eyes, is getting a medal at the White House. Why is it, Brady sometimes wonders, that people with only a little talent get so much of everything? It's just another proof that the world is crazy. Okay. Hold on, Brady. You can fuck your mom all you want. You can kill all these people, but you get Paul McCartney's name out of your fucking mouth, you little piece of shit. You're dead to me now. This was the last straw.
Uh-huh. Do you think King put this right after that sort of poignant flashback to remind us, like, hey, don't like him though? Like,
well,
like
I mean, maybe. I think the honest truth is that I don't think Stephen King loves the Beatles very much. Like in the Beatles Stones paradigm, he is a Rolling Stones fan. So
that's funny.
Yeah. But
so maybe this is meant to make him more endearing.
Maybe. No, I don't think so. I think it's just a fun thing he put in there that he knew would piss people off, because like saying Paul McCartney is has only a little talent is the most absurd statement that anyone has ever uttered in the history of the world.
It is actually.
That's absurd. Even if the Beatles aren't your favorite band, that's an absurd thing to say.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Finally, Brady sees the death announcement for Janie's mom and decides this is how he'll get back at Bill Hodges. He guesses correctly, mind you, that Bill will be at the funeral. And it's about here, Matt, where we see Brady's mom become like an active voice in his head, which again, I think is very psycho-like, right? You know, he's now Mrs. Hartsfield is talking to him actively.
Yeah, and that feels very fitting after this interlude where we just kind of realized how responsible she is for his current state. Now we better understand her active role in all of this, and now she becomes this voice in his head. Yeah,
totally agree. So we're back with Bill and Janie the next morning as they frantically get ready for the viewing after a post-bang sleep-in. I do really enjoy this moment in the book, just as like I really hate this Brady Hartsfield guy thing, as they are driving off to the funeral and Brady is sitting there scoping out the house and sees the truth of the matter is that Bill and Janie are sleeping together. He's like so pissed off. He's so angry about this, and it's for many reasons. I think the first of which is that this is demonstrate the abject failure of his entire plan to drive Bill to suicide. Not only is Bill further away from suicide than he's ever been, but he's also getting lucky with a woman like 20 years younger than him. That's incredible, actually. What a glow up for Bill Hodges.
Yeah. It's delightful to watch Brady get mad. It's very funny. I love it.
I do think the other thing, it may perhaps a little bit more interesting here, is how he gets mad. Because what he says here is, why in God's name would she do that? Hodges is old. He's fat. He's ugly. She can't really be having sex with him, can she? The idea is beyond belief. And I think this is important because like Brady Hartsfield is not an incel in like the way like Harold Lauder is, right? Like he's a very different kind of monster than Harold was. But I think his concept of sex is very juvenile. And I think that aligns with everything you've been saying about him this week, right? He doesn't understand the idea that attraction is more than just like a physical characteristic thing is not something he contemplates at all, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's the Arrested Development thing all over again. He has just a childlike mindset about all this stuff. Totally.
Yeah. But he does have a little enough awareness to at the end of this rant go, well, I bang my mom, so maybe no, when it comes to sex, nothing's beyond belief, actually.
Yeah.
Which
it's good to get glimmers of self-awareness from Brady toward the end here.
Yeah. Brady follows their car, taking Thing 2 from his glove compartment. He's going to nab the PKE signal as they head to the funeral and make Bill pay soon after that. With Bill and Janie, we learn that he's getting some information on car break-ins downtown in the last few years. He finds a series of break-ins that almost certainly were the work of Mr. Mercedes. We learn later that actually he's just 100% correct about this. The thing that stood out to me here, though, Matt, is the actual detective work in this detective story is kind of backgrounded, at least in this moment of the story, right? Like I think Bill is on the phone with his contact when Janie walks in the door in the morning, and so we only see a bit of the conversation, and he fills her in on the conversation later. And this is him doing the actual detective work. This is him doing the beat by beat detecting to find out who Brady is. And I'm not saying that, like, I'm not complaining, right? I'm not complaining that the detective stuff is backgrounded here. I think it just I noticed that the actual character work is the thing driving the narrative. The story of actually solving the who is the Mercedes killer part of this is kind of backgrounded. It's secondary to it, at least.
Yeah, yeah, I think I'm fine with that. I mean, I kind of like that aspect of this story is it's character driven, like I think everything Stephen King does, where we're we're really just sitting with the characters and they're making decisions, and as they do that, we see some of the investigation, but that's not the point, right? I think that's
Mm-hmm.
a particular thing we're doing here.
Yeah, yeah. So Brady and Janie head to the open casket wake, and Matt, I don't know if you've ever been to a wake before. Both of my uh, grandparents on my mother's side, when they passed away, we had an open casket wake before the funeral, and I just kind of find that incredibly ghastly. I don't like it. I like it. Just made me uncomfortable. Like I got to say goodbye to my grandparents, and like I saw them while I was saying goodbye, but it was just so so weird. I'm like getting the goosebumps as I think about it. I did not like it. I will just let the record show here on. It's a recording, so it's legally binding. When I die, I do not want people to see me.
Yeah,
Don't do
I
that.
it's interestingly we're on exactly the same page here. I don't think we ever talked about this before,
Mm-mm.
but I've my grandmother had a open casket wake, and I don't I didn't like it. I didn't think I didn't see I didn't even see how it was supposed to be helpful for anyone I almost want to know from someone who disagrees, like because clearly clearly some people do want an open casket
Mm-hmm.
funeral, and I'm just like I don't it makes me more upset, and not in a way that's like cathartic. It's just and 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 again, like you said, like I don't want somebody to look at my dead body after I'm dead. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't bring me any. The thought of that is a negative thought. Like the thought of
Yeah.
my family having to see that is a bad thought for me. Clearly, people disagree with us. It's hard. It's really hard for me to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think perhaps like a sense of closure, a sense of getting to see a person one last time. I don't know. I think maybe that made more sense in an age before photographs and video and these, like, you can see your loved one in recordings forever, basically, if you want to. That, like, getting to see their actual face one last time is less necessary, I guess. I don't
That's
know.
true.
I honestly don't know.
No, that makes sense. I mean, that does make a degree of sense to me. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate that angle on it. Yeah.
Hmm. Definitely not doing it myself.
No.
Bill notices that Holly hasn't come inside, and he goes out to find her. We see Holly outside smoking, afraid to come in because the body, the aforementioned open casket body. And I think, Matt, this is really the first time in the novel we've gotten to like see Holly and like really experience Holly, and so I wanted to definitely highlight this. Um, they're talking. I think one of the things is Holly basically immediately asks Bill, "Are you sleeping with my cousin?" Which which it does a couple things for us. It automatically endears us to her because she says, "It's all right with me. I think a woman should have lovers if she wants them. I don't myself. Men don't interest me. Not that I'm a lesbian." don't get that idea. I write poetry. So I think we're kind of endeared to her is that she's like completely fine with this, but also I think this is a little hint towards her skill. As we'll see at the end of this chapter, Holly is more than meets the eye. And there's a little hint of it, right? That she noticed this, she clocked this in a
Yeah.
way that other people maybe didn't.
Yeah, she's perceptive, but
Yeah,
she has issues that hold her back from
yeah,
the full realization of her potential. It's interesting how you just read that out loud, because I just sort of uncritically accepted the audiobook reader's choices, where he read it very, very flat affect. And I mean, I don't think I'm reaching in saying that Holly seems to be on the spectrum in terms of her behaviors and interests and so forth.
yeah. I was debating when to breach that with you,
Yeah.
and I had decided to just kind of let you do it first. And I'm glad that it's basically the first time we interact with her that becomes clear. I think you're absolutely right.
And it's emphasized by the audiobook reader because it's just a very like monotone, like
Mm-hmm.
that's what he's doing with her character. Not that she's not like dynamic in terms of her like inner life and personality, but just the way she speaks and so forth is very
Yeah,
flat.
yeah. And she's delightful. I love Holly. And actually, part of my mission with the reread of this book this time has been me wanting to really pay attention and study Holly to see if I could perhaps unlock the history of why, or perhaps more importantly when Holly first really grabbed Stephen King.
Hmm.
You know, and one of the things I have noticed upon paying close attention to it is, and I'm jumping around a bit here. I'm jumping forward in the chapter a little bit here. It's very clear that we see extremely early in Bill's relationship with Holly, and then a bit later in Jerome's relationship with Holly, that they just find themselves like strangely and almost inexplicably enjoying Holly. Like I think both of them, separate from each other, have sentiments like he liked her and he wasn't even really sure why. And I feel like this is King, like through the other characters, is reflecting on this thing that he's feeling about this character, even this early in her development, of just like, man, there's just something about her that I just really like, and I don't know how to explain it. It's almost explicitly inexplicable, but it's there, and I do think that's just King reflecting on his own character, his own creation.
Yeah, maybe the reason he keeps going back to her is he's trying to figure out what that is.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
I,
But
yeah,
he's
I
good.
also
He's
yeah,
going. There's another Holly book coming out, Matt.
that's so interesting. Yeah, it makes me really curious to read some of these. I think a little bit of it can be just like a writer. I say this from some amount of personal experience. Like you can get a huge source of like creativity boost if you try to write a person who's very different from you, and sometimes that doesn't work at all. And then sometimes
Mhm.
you're surprised to find that it feels easy, and like maybe there was some part of you that was like this all along, and you've only just tapped into this vein. And there's like this part of you that actually cries out for a voice, and it's finding a voice with this character. Like that, I'm not going to say that's happened many times, but when it does happen, it's kind of amazing. It feels like one of the more magical things that can happen with writing, and maybe that's kind of what this is for King. Maybe that's what Holly is for King.
I love that. I that's great. That's great. I hope maybe we can reflect on that once we finish the novel and talk about that in a little more detail once you've seen all of what she gets to do in this book.
Cool. Yeah, let's do that.
I also really loved this line in here. Holly looks at him out of her naked face. She doesn't have a damn thing going for her, Hodges thinks. Not a single scrap of wit, not a single wile. He will come to regret this misperception. But for now, he finds himself once more musing on Olivia Trelawney, how the press treated her, and how the cops treated her, including him.
Mhm.
That little bit there, that he will come to regret this misperception, I think is one of my favorite lines in this whole part of the book. Like
Yeah,
I
it's one of
love that.
me too. It's one of the increasingly rare fourth wall breaks toward the end of the book too.
Yeah, I think it's great you pointed that out. I think one thing that I realized today that we haven't done so far, that we boldly and incorrectly at the beginning of 11/22/63 said this doesn't fit the usual trappings of someone relating a story back to someone in the future, like talking about an event that passed. Mr. Mercedes is not that, right? Like the narration of this book, the structure of this book is not King's normal relating a story back to someone from a future time. And I think that's because he's playing in these hard-boiled tropes that you talked about earlier. So it is rare in this book that we get this kind of narrative foreshadowing explicitly in the text. But that, I think, draws it out and makes you notice it more.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a few scattered throughout the book, but I think this week's reading we get fewer from Brady. I think maybe none from Brady's point of view. Whereas before there were more of these little like asides to the reader, where it's like, the narrator giving us a little extra information that maybe Brady wouldn't have had in his stream of consciousness. That's dropped off with Brady, and somewhat with Hodges too, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do think it's important to say here, just before we move on, that like I do love this beat about he clearly sees the damaged, unwell Olivia Trelawney and sees Holly in her, and I think he explicitly says this is a second chance, right? This is I fucked up the first time. I didn't listen to this woman, and I had a hand in what happened to her. I can do this better, and we see that in the way Bill reacts to Holly, right? Like he's kind to her. Like he comes out here to check on her. He asks her if she's taking her medicine. He's asking her if she's eating her breakfast. He's worried about her. And I think importantly, he's worried about her and kind to her in a way. We haven't talked about Holly's mother too much yet, Matt. But Jesus Christ, she is awful. She is terrible. I mean, we don't know much about her outside of Janie's strong dislike of her, but the way she treats her daughter is very clearly. And if you want to talk about Brady Hartsfield comparisons, it's very oppressive, it's very controlling. It is another instance of a character who has a very poor relationship with their mother, and is possibly also in a state of arrested development herself, right? Holly is middle-aged, right? And is like completely domineered by her mother.
Yeah, that was another interesting moment where, like, the first time Holly was introduced, my brain like did not parse her age, even though it was like stated, and I like saw her as a teenager or something, and I was like, I almost said on the podcast, like the first week she was introduced, I was almost like, I referred to her as young, and then it's like, no, it's like she's a middle-aged spinster is what she's described as, and it's because of the way she behaves. So yeah, I think we're doing, but like I think the contrast here, yet another type of contrast, is like she has, I think, as Hodges says, not a damn thing going for her, but her reaction to that is not to become a monster and a killer, but to become someone who is sort of doing her best, trying to help.
Yeah, and as we'll see a little bit later, someone with actually great strength and wonder to her. Like I love Holly. We're getting there.
Right.
From here we cut over to Brady, who is scoping out the MAC. The security looks pretty tight, which Brady blames on 9/11 and not that guy that drove a Mercedes into a bunch of people at a convention center a year ago.
Isn't there a line that says like they ruined it for the rest of us, he thinks, without a trace of irony?
Yeah, without a trace of irony. Yeah. I love it so much. There's metal detectors we see. There's tons of security, but the metal detectors probably won't be used, Brady reasons. But there will definitely be a large amount of people who would like see a guy in a big sweater in the middle of summer and look at him suspiciously. And so he's kind of like, shit, how do I get in here? How do I figure this out? And as he's walking around, we get this beat here, which I think I want to read just because it aligns with the conversation we had during the flashback, though. Standing there in the lobby amid the guidebook-toting retirees and junior high school mouth breathers, Brady thinks, I wish Frankie was alive. If he was, I'd take him to the show. He'd be just stupid enough to like it. I'd even let him bring Sammy the fire truck. The thought fills him with a deep and completely authentic sadness that often comes to him when he thinks about Frankie. Like, this is huge. Like the fact that King is taking the time, completely authentic sadness.
Hmm.
King does not want you to think this guy is a psychopath, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think he's making that very clear here. He want like this is a kid who is still mourning his brother, but also like is still imagining himself as the 8-year-old kid taking care of the 4-year-old brother, right?
Hmm.
Like, like if Brady, like the fact that he says if Brady was, or if Frankie was alive today, I bet he'd like this. And the version of Frankie he imagines is the version that's still the little kid that loves his Sammy the fire truck, right? It's not what Frankie would look like all these years later as an adult. Yes, a brain damaged adult, but still an adult, right? It's he's completely frozen in this time when this thing happened.
Right. Yeah. It's sad. It's one of the few truly poignant moments we get with adult Brady.
Yeah,
Really fascinating what we're doing in this latter part of the book, where like you just wish that he would, you know, I don't know, not shake it off, right? It's a stupid thought. It's a stupid thought to have because like he's not gonna.
yeah,
This is who he is. He's broken. He's already committed horrible crimes. But you wish there was some way he could redeem himself.
yeah.
I don't think there is though.
Mm, yeah, I mean, we'll see, but yeah.
Yeah.
Brady is about to give up, Matt. He's about to say, "There's no way this can be done. There's no way I'm going to be able to sneak a bomb into this place." But then he sees something that makes him say, "Oh my God!" And Matt, the book doesn't say what Brady saw and what his plan for getting through security is, but we know he has one. We see some elements of what he'll use. He buys a bunch of boy band merch. He deconstructs his vest and he gets a large amount of ball bearings, which he fills into bags. He gets like a like put rear here seat cushion. I think he gets like a coloscopy bag as well or something. Um, but that's all we see. We don't really know what he's planning or what he's doing. What do you think? What is his plan here? And do you like the fact that it's weirdly obfuscated? Like it mentions several times there's this large item that he brings in that barely fit in this trunk, but King is like intentionally like never explicitly telling you what the item is.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned previously that this is one of those detective stories where we follow around the killer and thus the mystery of who the killer is has been revealed. But he is going to try to give us some mystery to figure out. So, you know, here, this is a fun opportunity for us to try to figure out
Sure.
what he's going to do. And I mean, I don't have a really like specific idea, but I mean, he's going to try to smuggle it in via some kind of container,
Hmm.
uh, which possibly contains just the bomb or could even contain like him. I'm not too sure, and I didn't
Sure.
spend a lot of time thinking about it because I wanted to get through the story. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
it's fun.
there's it's okay for some things to just be a mystery. I do. It, it it feels weird to make this a complaint, and this is things I've complained about before, but it does feel a little awkward to me when he has to write the text in a way that is like explicitly avoiding mentioning what this other big thing he bought is. It's just like the text has to like do extra work to be like the thing barely fit in his truck. Don't you wonder? Don't Hey reader, you wonder what it is? It's like barely, and he puts it against the side of the shed and he leans it up again. It's just like it just it's doing a lot of work in order to avoid the reveal in a way
Hmm.
that felt a little clunky to me.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know that it bugged me, but I get your point, right? It's because I don't know. I think you and I are relatively visual readers, probably to different degrees, right? But
I think
like,
you more so than me. Yeah.
but when somebody describes a series of physical actions and then assiduously avoid describing what the thing is, I'm just like, I can't see it. Like
Mhm.
you're messing with my ability to process this. But in this case, I don't think it bugged me too much, actually.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So back with Janie and Bill, we learn that she's decided to split half of her inheritance with her aunt and uncle, a decision that at first confuses Bill and then becomes very clear to him. Basically, it would serve to get these people off her back forever. With half the money, she would never have a reason to need to see them ever again, which is pretty savvy of her.
Yeah, many such cases.
Before we depart from this scene, though, Bill apologizes to Janie for everything, for her loss, for Olivia, but not just that, for everything. Like, he's apologizing for everything. He's apologizing for the deaths of the people at the convention center. And I couldn't help in this moment, Matt, but think back to that mother that we met briefly at the beginning of the book, who says she feels the need to apologize for everything all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything that everyone does, she feels the need to apologize for that. And that was an endearing quality of her. I mean, this is a good person who sees the pain and the evil in the world and feels empathy and feels bad about it, and feels like if she's not doing something to help it, she feels the need to apologize for it. And
Mm-hmm.
having Bill in this moment do that same thing, I think, is very intentional, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
It continues on to where he talks briefly in his mind, at least, about his mentor in the police department, which is a man named Frank Sledge, which, by the way, it's such a hard-boiled, it's the best name ever. I love it so much. Frank Sledge.
Yeah.
But Frank Sledge gave him some simple advice. Never call them the Vic. Remember their names. They're people. Remember them. Don't forget them. Don't other them. Allow them to be people. And I love this whole part. I love it so much.
Yeah, me too. I also love that this is a setup that then pays off relatively quickly. Sometimes
Yeah.
that's a good idea to do in stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're talking about when Pete calls Janie a Vic immediately
Right.
after her death.
Yeah, like pretty quickly after this scene. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Janie announces after everything is over that she's going to return to California. She doesn't want to stay in this town anymore, and if she stays much longer, she'll be liable to fall in love with Bill, and which we know has already happened. But and then the scene ends with him saying "yeah," and then Janie wrinkles her nose at him and grins. Yeah, I'm not crying. No, it's you.
Yeah. It's
You're
fine.
crying.
It's fine. Life is meaningless. It's fine. It's fine.
That's how you choose to deal with this emotion,
Yeah.
man.
I just choose to retreat into nihilism because nothing matters. Nothing matters because Janie's dead, or she's going to be.
Meanwhile, Brady fills a shoebox full of explosives. He's going to put it in Bill's car during the funeral. Matt, I guess the question I have for you is, what are you thinking at this point as you're reading this novel? Obviously, you have the foreknowledge that this is called book one of the Bill Hodges trilogy. So probably going to have Bill Hodges in book 2 and 3, probably, maybe. So I think you would probably be confident that in the fact that Bill is not going to be blown up here, right? But did you have any inkling of that it would be Janie? And then I know you said earlier you were like kind of subconsciously or intentionally not consciously thinking about her death, but at this point were you like, oh no?
Yeah, I mean, the thought definitely crossed my mind more than once prior to this week and this week. Like, I just was trying to not make it happen by not thinking about it too much.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, I think especially as the scene goes on, you kind of figure, okay, I see probably where this is going.
Yeah. All right. So we move to Wednesday, June 2nd, 2010. And King does this thing that he does fairly often, Matt, where we haven't seen it in a little bit, but he's really good at this thing where we have this quick montage of scenes as we kind of break the structure of our novel. Up until this point, as you pointed out, our novel has been pretty strict in its structure, that we are with Bill Hodges and then we are with Brady Hartsfield. And that's really all we do. We jump back and forth between those two characters and we move in and out of their perspectives to varying degrees, depending on what the scene calls for. But in this moment, we do this quick montage where we jump around from characters. We see Pete. We get to be in Holly's head for a little bit here. Brady's, of course. Bill's, of course. But we end on Janie, right?
Yeah.
We conclude this all with Janie, who we learned does indeed already love Bill Hodges. And that is, I know you don't see the death flags, Matt. I know you think they're false flags, but they are firing.
That's it's great. Yeah, no. I think at this point, at around this point, I was like, ah, man. I didn't want it to happen because look, sometimes I don't. Sometimes authors kill characters, and you're just like, yes, I understand why the characters in the story would be sad about this, right? Like you know what I mean. Like sometimes you're
Yeah,
just like, yeah, that was a well written death scene, and then you continue eating your sandwich, and then sometimes the story has like been completely successful in pulling you in and identifying with the characters and loving the characters, and then you just really actually don't want them to die, and you get really sad when they do. And this book, more than I think most of the books that we've read on this show and others, I think just did work on me, and I was like, actually really didn't want Janie to die.
yeah.
So yeah.
I agree. I think that's like just kind of the difference between sympathy and empathy, right? Like
Yeah.
in that I understand you characters are sad and I feel bad for you because you're sad versus I am sad because I loved this person actually and did not want her to die. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a book I read recently where, like, I really enjoyed the book, but when like the terrible, love interest death scene happened, I was like, ah, what a well done, what a well crafted scene. I wasn't like personally hurt by it, right? But like
Mm-hmm.
this book has actually succeeded on that kind of higher level.
Really curious what book that is.
I'm being intentionally vague because we haven't talked about it at all. So
Oh, I didn't know you were that far into that book.
no, it's a different book.
Oh, well, God damn it. Okay. Anyway, um, so this also like whenever King does the thing, like he's basically declaring to you this day is going to be important. We're setting up for something. It's like the Broadway montage before the final act of the story, right? Where we redefine and restate all characters' wants and needs as we move into the final act. It's almost exactly what this is.
You just caused me to like imagine all of them walking across the stage doing with like the Brady theme plays and the Janie theme plays as Janie articulates her character statement. Yeah, no, it's perfect. Love it.
I mean, they definitely should just make Mr. Mercedes the musical. I think that just needs to happen now.
I
So
agree.
I would do it, but I can't write music or anything. So
Yeah, me too, man. I would also do it, but
someone out there is a like. Go ahead and go. Maybe that'll be the discussion question for this week, Matt. Maybe we'll throw an audible. Just give us the track list for Mr. Mercedes the musical.
yeah, that's the second option. We'll say. Yeah.
All right, so they head to the funeral, which itself is pretty uneventful. Though King does keep flinging out these death flags, Matt. Like I don't know. You said you don't detect death flags, but when Janie gets up to the pulpit to talk about her dead mother and says the only thing she says is "I'd wish we'd have more time." She's like, "Fuck."
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah, it's really just landing on thick. I say, despite still not having accepted that Janie was dead. So
Fair. Yep. All right, here we go, Matt. Brady unlocks Bill's car, slips the shoebox bomb under the driver's seat side, and on their way out of the funeral, Holly has a fainting spell. She faints, and they all kind of collectively decide it would be best if Bill goes back in her car to be with her because she really likes Bill, and Bill is concerned about her. And so Janie decides that, well, what are we going to do with Bill's car? Well, Janie, I'll take it. I'll take your car. And actually, let me just grab your fedora because I want to wear your fedora if I'm driving your car. And this is, Matt, absolutely brutal because we know as soon as that happens, we know. And King has expertly built up this cause and effect chain that's going to lead to Janie dying. And we are seeing link by link the chain set up. And there's nothing we can do about it. We're just watching as like, oh, and no, she's going to get the hat. So when Brady looks through the window, he's going to see the hat and he'll think it's Bill. And it's just like, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. And
yeah,
it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
it's brutal. So this is a minor note, but this is the thing that like made me sad. Like thinking about it later was like the hat is also gone now. So like
So he can't even wear his hat. Yeah.
he can't even wear his hat, which would have at least been like a memento of this
Yeah.
woman who cared about him and who he loved.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. You're right. You're
yeah,
right. So as we said, Brady sees the fedora, confirms that Bill is in the car, and so he dials the phone. And this is another like twist of the knife, Stephen, is Janie hears the phone ring under the seat, and for a moment there, laughs because she's like, "Oh, silly Bill, he left his phone in the glove compartment again. Will he ever learn?" Right? It's this really like cute moment of just like this woman clearly in love with this man and still in that early phase of a relationship where the flaws or the failings of the person are just like adorable little quirks, and
right.
she just finds that so funny and just like laughingly rolls her eyes at it. That's just mean, Steven. That's mean. That's so mean.
It is. It's so well done. It's so well
Yeah.
done, and I'm so sad.
Yeah. So the car blows up. And I guess the question I have for you in this moment, and maybe we don't kick a man while he's down too much, but like Bill got death threats from Brady Hartsfield pretty explicitly,
Hmm.
and he didn't really do anything about them. But the other thing he didn't do was tell Janie that he has explicitly threatened my life. Right? Like in the Italian restaurant, there is a scene where they ask him point blank, "Has he said anything else to you?" And he lies and says, "No, he has not." So did Bill fuck up by not taking this stuff seriously enough here? Like, I'm not saying like, oh, let's be on bomb alert all the time, but like, should he have taken that this is a murderer who has killed people before and is threatening your life and is saying you won't see it coming? Should he have taken that a little more seriously?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say no. Is my answer.
Mm,
I don't know that my mind would have jumped to car bomb, but
sure.
like still though, you could be more careful. Like if yeah, I mean, short answer, yes, right? Like if he's going to the funeral specifically because he thinks the killer might show up, and he knows the killer is trying to kill him, then he should have his head on a swivel. Like
Hmm.
pretty, it does seem a little. I don't know. I don't know how like harsh to be. I don't know what level of harsh to be. I also think that he's going to be harsh on himself eventually. So,
Sure. Yeah.
um,
He'll do all this for us. Yeah.
yeah.
I think it is true that he has like kind of constantly been preaching bolo to them, right? Be on
Mhm.
the lookout. And he hasn't been boloing very well. He's been nose crinkling. He's been paying attention to that a whole lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. That's a good point. Is like he is in detective mode, but he's also in puppy love mode, and
Yeah.
that's probably hampering him a bit.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't want to I don't want to play this game of like this is all your fault, Bill, because I think there's going to be plenty of that from Hodges himself. But yeah, I mean, I think it's there.
Mhm.
The book has done a very good job laying these things out for us, so we're thinking about them, and so it makes logical sense that our main character will also be thinking of them.
Right. Yep.
One of my favorite things in the world about the scene, though, Matt, is Holly. Holly is the first one out of the car. Holly is the first one sprinting back towards the sound of the explosion, not running away from it, but running towards it. Right? This
Mhm.
is based on everything we've been told about Holly so far. This is the exact opposite of reaction you think she would have. And it is the first glimpse of that thing that the book kind of cleverly hinted at, that there's something more going on here. I think when you and I were talking before we recorded, you said there's a steel in her, which is
Mhm.
the king expression for a gunslinger. It's perfect. It's perfect here. You are absolutely right. It is there. Like Holly beats Bill to the scene of the explosion. She gets there first, and that matters for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's really it really changes the way you think about her. Actually,
Yeah.
just in this
Mhm.
exact moment. Yeah.
Yep. So Bill gets there. He immediately goes into detective mode here, Matt. He realizes that if he wants to be the one to catch Mr. Mercedes, and now he certainly wants to be the one, there's that echo of when he had a conversation with Jenny where they said he's ours. He'll have to find a way to explain all this to the cops to keep them off his back. And so one of the first things he says is to Holly, he says, I loved her, but you can't tell anyone. You can't tell anyone I loved her. Maybe later, but not now. Do you understand? And she nods.
Mhm.
Holly's great here, man. She's kind of in shock. She's not audibly responding to anything. She's processing it all, but she's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Well, this is the best thing about all of this is that Hodges' interpretation of her behavior is like, okay, she's just blue screened.
Yeah.
There's not even any point in talking to her, and she doesn't even seem to be paying attention. And then she hands him the glasses case that has the information that he was asking for, and it's like
Yep.
the most clever and efficient way of doing it. It's exactly the right thing that she should have done, and she did it.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, okay, so he's totally wrong about his perception of her, and it was actually really cool
Yep.
in that moment. Yeah.
Totally. So Bill tells Holly to hang back at the house while her mother and uncle have to go to the police station, and that Jerome will be reaching out to her, which is what he does. He calls Jerome now, and he says, this part is really interesting to me, Matt. I'm going to roll on this, and I need you to help me. The scum bucket killed her. I want his ass, and I mean to have it. Will you help? Yes. Not how much trouble could I get in? Not this could totally screw me up for Harvard. Not leave me out of it. Just yes. God bless Jerome Robinson. Okay, great. I love this, Matt. Great. Love Jerome. Great response. But this could get him in a lot of trouble and totally screw him up for Harvard, right?
Yeah, I mean, or get him killed, right? Like,
Yeah.
the yeah. I think it does feel irresponsible to drag Jerome in even deeper, right? Like, I think previous weeks I was a little ambivalent about whether he was putting Jerome at risk, because I was like, well, he doesn't really know the situation, but now he kind of does know the situation, and so it just seems a little irresponsible.
Yeah. I think Jerome is in it now. It's too late for that
Mm-hmm.
already, but yeah, maybe I guess maybe like he just blew up Janie. You could be in danger as well. Like he doesn't have to say that you can be in danger as well part. That's just like a given. But yeah,
True.
yeah.
Yeah. Fair.
So Jerome has or Bill has Jerome log into the Blue Umbrella account and send Mr. Mercedes a message. Once again, we don't get to see the message until Brady reads it. And Matt, it's mwah, oh, it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. It starts with missed me and the smiley face. And oh man, like fucking I'm just gonna read it all because it's awesome. And here's something to remember, asshole. I'm like your side mirror, you know? Objects are closer than they appear. I know how you got into her Mercedes, and it wasn't the valet key. But you believed me about that, didn't you? Sure you did, because you're an asshole. I've got a list of all the cars you burglarized between 2007 and 2009. I've got other info I don't want to share right here, but here's something I will share. It's perp, not perk. Why am I telling you this? Because I'm no longer going to catch you and turn you into the cops. Why should I? I'm not a cop anymore. I'm going to kill you. See you soon, mama's boy. And all I could think of was like, get his ass. Get him, Kermit.
Yeah. I love so much about this. It's so well done. I mean, I love that we knew the perp not perk thing was going to come back into the story, but
Yeah.
we thought we knew how it was going to come, because I think everybody who reads this probably has a similar thought where they're like, oh, okay, like Hodges is going to be getting ice cream, and the ice cream man is going to say perk, and he's going to be like, like some story moment where it's revealed. But this is like so much more satisfying because he throws it away in order to make this statement of like you should be afraid. And of course,
You're totally right. It's so wonderful. I mean, he kind of says this explicitly, but it's like, this was my one tool on how I was going to legally nail you for these crimes.
Yeah.
And it is the perfect symbolic gesture of, I don't need that in my tool belt anymore because I don't care about the legality of your incarceration anymore. I am not trying to catch you and turn you into the cops anymore. I am going to kill you.
Yeah.
like that is his ace card, and he plays it because he doesn't need it anymore. It's
Right.
yeah, it's so good.
That's what's so satisfying about it. And then the other satisfying part, of course, is that he ends it with "See you soon, Mama's boy," which is just from his like profiling, basically.
Yeah, yeah,
But is like the most inflammatory possible thing that you could say to Brady in his current state of mind.
yeah. It's perfect because it says it activates him right where he's most vulnerable, and it indicates I am what he's exactly saying, which I am very close. I'm very
Yeah.
close. I know you. I know who you are. I don't know your name yet, but
Mhm.
I'm coming for you. It's all so good, all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we cut from here to Bill in the interrogation room with his old friend and partner Pete, trying to figure out just what the hell is going on here. This is where you mentioned that the beat of "never call them the Vic" is concluded here with Pete referring to Janie that way. Pete is also clearly mad as Bill starts to go through his explanation about the idea that he might have made a mistake with Olivia Trelawney, which I think it is once again we're drawing a line between the differences between the type of cop Bill Hodges is and was to the type of cop Pete is.
Hmm. Yeah. It kind of once again explains why they're not best friends.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, Pete is not willing to either take responsibility or admit error. And
Mm-hmm.
Bill is all about both of those things.
Yep. So Bill weaves a good story here, Matt. He tells basically an explanation for how the sister of Olivia Trelawney ended up in his car and how this explosion probably doesn't have anything to do at all with the Mercedes killer. Definitely not. It's nonsense, right? We see that Pete kind of immediately clocks it as bullshit, but it doesn't matter because it will hold up long enough for him to get the time he needs to get this guy, right?
Yeah.
As they investigate it, as soon as they shine any light on it whatsoever, they're going to realize that it doesn't add up and the whole thing's going to crumble. But he doesn't need it to stay to work forever. He just needs it to go. He needs it to work for now. And Matt, I don't think this question I'm about to ask you ultimately matters, but do you think outside of the it feels good because we hate Brady and want Kermit, we want uh Bill to be the one to get him. Do you think you should go to the cops now? Like, if you were in this situation, would you go to the cops now?
Oh gosh, I don't think it would have gotten this far if I was.
Okay, but pretend it did though.
Yeah. And I think definitely like the rational thing to do is to go to the cops at this point because
The person's dead,
uh,
right? Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot now. There's evidence. There's clues. The cops can put these clues together. Um, you know, you're probably going to get in trouble for hiding it from the cops, right? I mean, Bill, right? If like, I don't think this is a motivating reason for Bill, but like, I think maybe one reason why he wouldn't tell the cops at this point is that then he would have to tell the cops that he has been, playing this game on his own when he really shouldn't have been this whole time. So,
Yeah, but I think the vibe I got from this is that is an inevitability now. Like
mhm.
the second his car explodes with a bomb in it, and the sister of the owner of the Mercedes, like the second that happens, that's going to happen eventually. And all he's doing now is delaying that happening to give him time to get the guy. So
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I think ultimately the best story thing is that he doesn't, but he is putting people in danger, possibly. Like he doesn't know about the concert attack that Brady is planning, but we do, and so we're again like, oh, you better get this guy because if you don't, then he blows up a whole fucking concert of
Yeah.
children. Not gonna look good on you, Bill.
Yeah. Right. Like I said, that would be the rational thing, but he's not behaving rationally.
Mm-hmm.
He's horribly, you know, psychologically injured at this point. One thing I didn't fit in when we were talking about the immediate aftermath of the explosion is just how he went just like totally cold, and we don't really
Yeah.
see his emotions again for quite a bit after the event actually happens.
Yeah, it's not till he's leaving the police station and like in by himself in the stairwell walking down that he allows himself to emotionally react to the fact that the woman he loved and like basically gave him a second life has died, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and he had to cover her arm with a jacket.
Right.
She's
Yeah,
awful. We didn't say that, but
we didn't. It was
it's
horrible.
awful.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and he doesn't like he does these things, but you don't really see what he's thinking. He's just sort of turned off that part of himself.
Yep. All right, so Jerome calls Holly on the phone and asks if he can come over to take a look at Olivia's computer. I I love these two so much, and I love their interactions. This one in particular jumped out at me. There's more silence, and then in a voice so low and timid he can barely hear it, Holly asks, "Are you safe? Because I worry about people. I worry very much." Just love it. Love it so much.
Yeah, me too. I love her. I already love her.
At Olivia's house, Jerome shows up, uses the gate and alarm codes that they got from Janie, and begins to search the computer. Jerome's interactions with Holly, Matt, are just the best. I love this whole thing. "You're black," she says, looking at him wide-eyed. Jerome looks down at his hands. "I am, aren't I?" She bursts into peals of shrill laughter. "I'm sorry, that was rude. It's fine that you're black. Black is whack," Jerome says. I really like this as like, I don't want to read too much into this as just like a funny, awkward scene because Holly is funny and awkward. But like, also, Jerome's identity crisis has been a pretty substantial part of his character, right? He's
Uh-huh.
this young black man that is constantly pegged as like, I don't even know how to phrase this, but like he's going to Harvard, right?
Uh-huh.
He's being he's looked at in a certain way because of his blackness, and he's confused about how he feels about all these things. And just for Holly to just come out right out and say it to him, I think it's just like kind of a perfect completion of that arc, right? It's like I see you and
Yeah,
I understand you and I know you. You're black. Hey, you're
yeah.
black.
Well,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
I mean, she opens their interaction that way so
Yeah.
that they can just move past it,
Uh-huh.
like very very explicitly, and then
Yeah.
it's like that. Okay, good, that's fine. It's not like I think maybe that's part of the identity crisis for him is that there's always this like tension of like
Mhm.
dancing around it or treating it with kid gloves or this thing that he feels between himself and these people he's trying to get close to, and she just like is like, oh, okay, we're okay, that, yeah, okay, good, now we can move on, we can
Mhm.
just get down to business.
You're right. Yeah, you're totally right. That's well said. I agree. So Jerome begins checking out the computer, and when he's stuck, unable to find the files he's looking for, he's helped by Holly, of all people. Matt, we learned she's taken a computer course over the internet and knows her way around the machine pretty well. I liked this, Matt, because I think you said a couple weeks ago when you were imagining what the role Holly would serve in the story, you figured she would possibly be like the Jerome type character, the one that like is helping out on the side with the investigative, some of the tools. And it took like 300 pages, but hey, we're there. Right? You were essentially right.
Yeah. um how did I know that? Yeah, no, it's,
Sometimes your guesses just work, right?
I guess so.
I really liked it. Like, I'm just gonna keep reading about their interactions because I love them. He says, "Go on, go with your bad self." Jerome says and holds up a hand. Still looking at the screen, Holly slaps him 5. "Play it, Sam." He grins. Casablanca. "Yes, I've seen that movie 73 times. I have a movie book. I write down everything I see. My mother says that's OCD. Life is OCD." Jerome says. I love them so much. I love everything about this. I love like Holly clearly likes movies. Uh, Everything about this is
Yeah,
is delightful to me.
yeah, it's an unexpected little pick me up after a
Hmm.
sad point in the story, and I think it works really well. You
Yeah,
like both of these characters.
yeah. So Jerome and Holly together find the sound files that Brady got onto Olivia Trelawney's computer. The crying baby, the mother that is blaming her, and they also find the virus that probably got his ability to put these things in there. They both reach the same conclusion at the same time. The only person that could have originally gotten this stuff onto the computer in the first place is her IT guy. And suddenly we're like, we see we're getting closer and closer to Brady himself, right?
Yep. Exactly. We're honing in on him. We got him.
I love this beat where they ask each other the question of, well, why didn't he just remove this program and all traces of it after he was done, after she died? And it's a valid question. And I guess that's my question for you. What was this? Was this a mistake? Was this arrogance? Was this perhaps Brady subconsciously wanting to be discovered and found to get credit for the things that he did? What do you think?
My first thought was simply that Brady isn't as smart or careful as he thinks he is.
Which we know is true, I think. Yeah. Let's point out that since the start of the novel, after the prologue, he has tried to kill two things and has failed in killing those two things and killed two other things instead. So
Uh,
I think that's a fair statement you're making there.
yeah.
Tried to kill a dog, failed, killed his mom. Tried to kill Bill, failed, killed Janie. Not good at killing, not good at killing specific things.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think your suggestion of arrogance also works here because he might know that he left these traces, but he figures that like nobody's as smart as me, so they won't even check for these traces. But
Yeah,
of
yeah.
course, he's wrong about that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that kind of leads us to the end of our chapter, Matt. They kind of relay this information to Bill, who is disappointed that they don't know. They couldn't find like a card or any information on who the IT guy is. We have, it has been established by Jerome that there are tons of IT services in the city. So they're just kind of stuck. And the way this thing ends is in his dreams, the realization finally comes to him that perhaps the reason she doesn't have a card for a specific IT guy is because it's not a specific IT guy. It's a big company, and a big company has a memorable phone number, and that, I guess, as we end the chapter, is like, oh, okay. Now he knows that it's going to be Discount Electronics, and he's gonna. That's where we're going next, right? Um,
Yeah,
how do you feel about how this ends in particular? Because I did. There was a part of me that was like, why are you stressing about like whether she would have a card for the IT person? Like that's maybe it's just because that's not the way I would ever do things myself. Is
yeah,
I just don't keep. I think the implication is that her address book on her computer was wiped out by Brady, right? And she doesn't have any physical stuff. But I just would never have like I would just
yeah.
never operate in a way that I would have any record of if my computer broke, who I sent it to fix it was. Like
No.
I just wouldn't operate that way. And he's like, it's so weird that there's no way of telling this. One of the few revelations in the story or realizations for Bill that felt a little clunky to me.
Yeah, it feels a little clunky because it's written by a man who definitely sends his computer to Best Buy Geek Squad when there's a problem with it, and who definitely heavily relies on his computer address book. And you and
Mhm.
I probably do neither of those things,
Yeah.
except to the extent that I rely on the computer address book to autofill email addresses, which is not really what they mean here.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't have a computer address book.
I
I don't
mean,
have any kind
no,
of address. I mean, I have a cell phone
right?
with names and
No, no. I mean, all I have is Outlook, which auto populates information about people if I have
yeah.
talked to them before, which is not at all the same thing as an address book. And I've never had an address book in a professional context. And I send a lot of emails. So, and also, yeah, you and I are just we're more of we're more like Jerome than we are like uh, uh, Hodges or Stephen
Mhm.
King, and so this seems really weird to us. But that's why. Um,
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think this is exactly why I was kind of like, okay, I guess that works. He also, we didn't mention this, but like in the dream, I think he's like getting really close to making the ice cream truck connection as well. Like
mhm.
he specifically turns over the conversation he had with the one kooky neighbor, and that's what helps him get to the IT business organization thing. But he's really close to the ice cream truck part too. So we're getting really close here. Like the second they walk to Discount Electronics and he goes, "Hey, who you got working here? Can I talk to your people and see like their history of serving what places?" And it was like, "Oh, that was Brady. He's probably at his second job doing the ice cream truck." It's
Uh-huh.
gonna be like,
Yeah,
so we're
yeah,
right there. We're right there.
totally, totally.
Yeah. All right, so that is where our chapter ends. As we mentioned, next week we will finish the book. We've got 2 chapters left, Kisses on the Midway, and our final chapter of the book, Blue Mercedes. So we will wrap everything up next week. Wow, we're almost
Awesome.
done.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, let's get into our discussion question. What did we ask the folks last week?
So we asked, what is your favorite instance of accidental poisoning?
And I have to say, you folks out there love poison. We got so many answers to this question. I couldn't believe it. You guys love poison.
It's delightful. What's funny, Scott, you and I sometimes ask questions where we're like, I don't know if there are any actual good examples of this thing that we're asking for examples of. And then y'all always come through. So
yeah. I mean, I thought of The Princess Bride.
Yeah,
that's like the one that I was in my head when I said it, and I was pleased to see a lot of people same thing.
Yes. So for example, Squatch42 says, mine is so iconic that I only need to say 2 words and everybody will know what I'm talking about. Iocane powder. And does it count as accidental because Vizzini thought the goblet he drank from wasn't poisoned? I think it does. Vizzini and Brady have a lot in common. Both think much more highly of their intellect than they ought. They even keep using a word that doesn't mean what they think it means. Inconceivable and perk.
That's great.
I can picture a modern day Vizzini living in his mom's basement, trolling people online. In fact, it's not inconceivable that he would be the perk in a crime like Mr. Mercedes. That's delightful. I love that so much.
Yeah. Next we have No Knowledge 84, who says the best poison scene is in The Princess Bride. Remember, kids, never trust a Sicilian when death is on the line. Yes. You
That's
agree
right.
with Squatch.
You should remember that.
I'm Sicilian, by the way, at least half.
I'm also Sicilian.
So don't trust us when death is on the line.
Yep. Me and Scott are not related. I don't know if people know that. It's totally a coincidence.
We just have so many random things in common.
Yeah. Aqua Lungfish says, my favorite poisoning in fiction is the poison for Cusco, the poison chosen specifically to kill Cusco's poison. If anyone doesn't know, I'm of course referring to The Emperor's New Groove, or as I refer to it with my son, the Llama movie. While he didn't actually receive that specific poison, it was accidentally dosed with essence of llama, leading to one of the most underrated movies in Disney's back catalog. There's so many hilarious situations and quotable lines in here, and an actually good story with character development that makes sense, and all of it possible because of that poison.
Great answer.
Yes.
I love that movie so much.
It is a very funny movie. Yes, I agree.
It is totally underrated too. Like, I think the people who have seen it really love it, but still not many people have seen it.
Yeah. It came out at a weird time. I don't really have a good explanation for this,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Next we have BC Johnson, who says one of the most oddly satisfying flirting with heroic poisoning is in Game of Thrones. Spoilers, I guess. Arya Stark poisons the wine of all of the Freys and turncoat riverlords as revenge for the Red Wedding, while swatching and mocking them in Walder Frey's stolen face. Well, it took a long time for any justice to drop on Walder Frey's head, and he isn't poisoned himself, unless you count feeding someone their own sons to be in a pie to be poisoning. We as the audience get to watch Frey's entire extended family take a derp nap in the very hall where he and they committed one of the most heinous acts in the series. It's worth the wait. Yeah, I agree. Here's what I'll say, and this I think fills in a lot of my complaints with the last few seasons of Game of Thrones. They are trying to do this thing with Arya in this scene and these seasons as a whole, Matt, where we are meant to be uncertain if we should be celebrating her mass murder or extremely worried about her and her losing her humanity, right? Because they do this whole thing with Littlefinger. I don't remember which scene it is where like you think Littlefinger is convincing her to betray her sister, and you think like oh no, is Arya going to become an enemy of the Starks? And it's just a fake out in the end. But I feel like they fucked up how we're supposed to feel about Arya in a kind of clunky way, which hurt this scene for me. I agree, it is very satisfying from like the base level of like, I hate the phrase and I want them all to die, and we get to see that happen. But I think the clunkiness with which they handled Arya hurt a little of that for me.
Yeah, it's really not supposed to feel awesome when Arya does these things. It's supposed to feel like a child who is losing her innocence in increments. Yeah. And
but they want it to feel awesome, and they want to play that game
yeah.
of we should be worried about Arya. Yeah.
Well, and this doesn't even happen in the book at all. So, and it probably won't
yet.
Yeah, well,
when the book comes out in 2025.
I don't even think that this scene would ever happen in the book, because I don't think this is what Arya's character is in the book. But anyway,
yeah, no, fair.
Speaking of something totally different, OK Row 2424 says Game of Thrones. They say
it's a completely different poisoning, though.
Completely different poisoning. They say my favorite poisoning in fiction that I can think of off the top of my head is the poisoning of, spoilers, Joffrey in A Song of Ice and Fire. It's just so satisfying to see this little prick die after seeing how cruel he is for 2 3/4 of a book. The poisoning even helps advance the plot beyond just Joffrey dying, as his grandfather Tywin then uses the opportunity to try and turn everyone against Tyrion. This, of course, leads to the trial in one of the best duels I've ever read. It's a damn good duel.
It is a great duel. It's a great scene, and that is in the books, Matt, and it's delightful.
That is in the books. Every bit of that is in the books.
And then he kills his dad.
Yep.
And he doesn't shit gold.
What a good writer.
I need to read those books again, but I've told myself I'm not doing it until the next one comes out. So,
yeah,
2025.
Yeah, 2020. Sure, Scott.
Next, we have Blissorb, who says, my favorite poisoning comes from a book already covered by y'all, Eyes of the Dragon, where King Roland gets poisoned by Randall Flagg. I love how potent it is and how obvious it was that Peter would not be able to get access to such a strong poison, yet they blame him anyways. P.S. You can now leave comments on podcasts on Spotify. Oh, no. Or good.
Didn't know that. Yeah.
Know that.
We'll have
everyone quick, flock to Spotify and say nice things about us.
Yeah, maybe, huh. Yeah, we'll have to actually see what that interface looks like. Figure that out. Cool. Jaraxis Eridar Lord says, to combat the Resident Evil slander of the episode, the previous episode, 5 is good and I'll not hear otherwise, I'll ignore better answers and say that my favorite poisoning is William Birkin, a scientist who gives himself a virus to get revenge on those who killed him. In standard Resident Evil fashion, the unintended happens and he turns into a giant monster. 5 also has Excelligione, who gets injected by Albert Wesker, and in standard Resident Evil fashion, the intended happens and she turns into a giant monster.
These games are so stupid. I mean, I love them, but they're so stupid. Everyone was mad at me for saying 5 was bad. I didn't realize 5 had such strong defenders.
People feel strongly about video games that they invest hundreds of hours into, I guess.
Yeah. I didn't say it was bad. It's fine. It's not as good as the first 4.
There you go.
Hobadian says, the objectively best poisoning of all media history has objectively got to be the food poisoning in 0 Hour, but not the original adaptation, the remake from Abraham and his Zuckers. But also, I don't want to talk about the deal with airline food. That's a hack bit. I want to talk about the poisoning from VC Andrews' Flowers in the Attic, so we can get a little incest talk into the poisoning question, from little poisoning getting into the incest book. See, there's this dame who's estranged from her dad because she ran off with his son to start a family. Now the son's widowed the tomato, leaving her a quartet of croutons. Matt, what is going on in this answer?
I have no idea.
And she has to endear herself back into the family to get an inheritance now that the breadwinner is toast. There's so many expressions in here, I can't keep up. So the croutons are sealed up in the attic, secreted away like healthy greens in a salad. Only the littlest crouton is getting sick, and it's all very sad, and the 2 elder croutons are making breadcrumbs, and the trail leads them to figure out that the tomato and the sun-dried tomato are both trying to cut their carbs. So the trio of croutons remains escaped to the Habsburg Empire. I am surely damned for conceiving this bit. Algorithm save me. I don't know what's happening.
So probably hurts that I haven't read Flowers in the Attic.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that would shine a light on this.
or 0 hour. So this was kind of like reading the that book that's written in a made up language. It's kind of what I felt here. So thank you for that experience, Obademon. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it is really late at night, and I just had like an experience, and
Yeah,
I don't know where I am right now.
it was mildly psychedelic. I'm going to be honest. All right. Hopefully this one is in English. Uh, Bandit Panda 19 says, funny enough, when I think of poisoning, the first thing that comes to mind is Mr. Mercedes. This is my first time reading the book, but I watched the show when it first came out. I don't know if this is considered a spoiler for the show since it plays out like what we just read, but Brady's mom scene of eating the meat is one of the most realistic poisoning scenes I've ever seen on screen. The fear of not knowing what to do because no one is around is gut-wrenching and horrifying to watch. While I do like the poisoning aspect of the Arkham games and the gratifying poisoning in Game of Thrones, the scene in Mr. Mercedes will make me avoid ground meat in the freezer for the rest of my life. Great.
That's cool. We haven't watched the show. We will be watching the show, so we will get to see this scene here in just a few weeks. But I'm looking forward to this, Matt. I'm looking forward to this show. I think it's gonna be good.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Last but not least, we have Stephen Flag 78 who says my answer simply has to be Claire Danes playing Juliet. I have to, even though y'all mentioned the play. I'm picking the specific version with Danes, and since she was my childhood crush from my so-called life, it was a no-brainer for me. I struggled with it because, let's be honest, it was some overacting for sure, but I also believe in going in with my instincts, and they led me here. So anyways, excellent work as always, gentlemen. Romeo plus Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann 1990s version, is the best adaptation of Romeo and Juliet ever.
It's the true version of the story, really.
It is so 90s and so good. And yes, are they overacting? Yeah, probably. But also, it's Shakespeare, man.
Yeah.
You gotta go big with that shit. You can't do Shakespeare small. No, you have to go big. If you're a listener out there and you have not watched Baz Luhrmann's Romeo plus Juliet, please go right now and watch it. It is so much fun. It is such a fun, exciting version of that story. I love it to death. Great answer.
Awesome.
All right. That is it for last week's question. Thank you to everyone who talked about how much you love poisoning people. And if anyone in your lives ends up poisoned, they're coming for you because it's in your Google search now. So just be ready for that.
Yeah, do what needs to be done.
You may maybe poison them.
No, I mean, delete your search history, obviously.
No. Yeah, that. Definitely don't poison the cops when they come to ask you about it.
All right, moving on.
just an ongoing number of poisonings that just keep occurring.
We're just digging our graves over here.
Matt, what are we asking for our discussion question next week? What are we asking these folks?
So other than the previous question of the what was it, the track list for the Mr. Mercedes musical.
Yeah.
The question
Why
was,
are you saying it with that kind of tone? I don't like that. It's a great question.
It's a great question. The other question here is most effective late recontextualization of a character's past that changes your feelings about them. I don't want to say just recontextualization that makes you like them more, because surely there are many cases where a recontextualization of a character's backstory makes you like a character less. But I am fascinated by this. It's always fun. It's a fairly common literary storytelling conceit.
Yeah.
And I kind of always like it. And I want to hear about some good ones, some of your favorite ones.
Yeah. Also, when you name one of the songs in your Mr. Mercedes musical, Det Ret, I need you to tell me what is the style of that? What are we getting down with in Det Ret, the opening of Mr. Mercedes the musical?
Yeah.
Someone's gonna do this. Just watch. Someone's gonna take it seriously and fucking knock it out of the park, and it's gonna be awesome.
I know, we're gonna get 9 of these. Yeah, totally.
But your question's good too.
Thanks, man.
This is funny, folks, because we struggled for 25 minutes before recording the show of what we should pick for a question, and Matt actually did a very good job of coming up with a good question. Now I'm just being an asshole for no reason. But that's what we do.
It's ruining our delicately laid plans. Oh well.
That's it for us here this week, though. As we said, and next week we will conclude Mr. Mercedes. We'll read the last 2 chapters and finish the book. So get read and finish this up, and then join us next week to talk about it.
That's right. Remember, you can reach us via email at kingslingerspod@gmail.com, on Twitter at kingslingerspod, and over on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia.
And don't forget to head to doofmedia.myshopify.com and check out that new merch, the Bliss Orb mug and the Propagating the Time Wave collection. Get them all. Great.
Get them all. That's right. And if you like Kingslingers and you want to support us, then please consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia. This week, you can check out our latest episode of Castle Talk. We had a lot of fun with that, and we think you will enjoy it.
Definitely. Of course, if you cannot afford to donate right now, that is absolutely okay. There's still tons of other ways of helping us out, including sharing the podcast. Matt, I counted today. We've got 11 more episodes after this one.
Oh, geez.
So there's still time to share us, but time's running out. But you got to do it because honestly, the podcast is going to exist in perpetuity forever because it's never going to go away and people can always find it. So please keep sharing it. Please keep letting people know that there's a great way to experience the Dark Tower along with us if they haven't yet. And of course, you can always leave us a rating and a review. We have a new review this week from A. Jones, APN, who gives us 5 stars and says, "Gunslingers, these guys have not forgotten the face of their fathers. Love this podcast." Yeah, thank you so much. He called us gunslingers.
Oh my God. I love it. Thank you.
Got that steel. Got that steel.
Deep steel.
One of the greatest fears of my life is that I do not have that deep steel, and I've just not been in a situation where I've had to test that fact.
Yeah, it does feel a little arrogant to be like, no, I think I've got that deep steel.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, man. You think you've been through stuff, but it's like, okay, but maybe you've never really been through that final trial that would be the one that you really needed the deep steel and it wasn't there,
Yeah, true. Let's just say everyone, you've all got steel. All of us.
We've all got deep steel.
I was trying. What was the name of the Steel Baron? I was trying to frantically be like, we're like, it's not Rockefeller. Wasn't the steel one, right? Who is the Steel Baron?
I don't know. I don't know.
This is not the way you end a podcast.
No.
All right, folks. We'll see you next week. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.